Welcome back to Behind the Scenes as I take more of your questions on various topics. This question is from Lydia Justice Kimball, who said, I'm watching the later seasons and I'm on season 9, and I noticed that the music is pretty, but it is not like the music in the earlier seasons. Why did they change? I don't know a whole lot about the music in terms of how those decisions were made or if the composer changed. I think we had a lot of the same credits throughout the show, so whether they were reusing music that had been used previously, whether they decided to change the style, I don't really know. But I know I did watch a great documentary, sort of an interview with one of our composers, and he talked about how much he enjoyed doing the music from the show. So I've been asked this question before, and I'm sorry I don't have more detailed information. All the music happened after we were finished filming, so we were not around for any of that. So that's the best I can do. My next question is from Julianne Osvan. A couple questions I have. If the actors fluffed their lines, did they get into trouble with the management afterwards? I think this is a question sort of for theater or for television. So on stage, it happens, and no, people didn't get in trouble for it, not on the productions that I was involved with. You made a note to yourself and went, well, I'm going to either review that or you move on. I mean, it happens to people in life, so I think there's a degree of realism to somebody fumbling over a line. So it wasn't a huge deal, but it wasn't something that you looked to do on a regular basis. Forgetting lines was more of a deal than fluffing lines, because if you forget lines, then you just hope that other people in the scene on stage can help guide you back to where you need to be. Sometimes someone says something or something happens, and yes, you also sort of asked, have you ever been in a situation on stage where you started laughing and couldn't stop? That has happened sometimes, where just something accident thing happens. One time I was doing a show and someone was supposed to toss me something or toss something to someone else, and he totally missed the person, and it was an item of clothing and it went into the audience. And we needed it back. So they literally had to go and go, can I have that back? And the audience cracked up and everybody on stage cracked up. And it took us a bit. Fortunately, it was a comedy. But it took us a bit to kind of get it back together. And sometimes, things happen and you're trying really hard not to just break down and laugh. Fortunately, I've typically worked with actors where we collectively get it back together and carry on, but it happens. And I think sometimes if it's a comedy, the audience enjoys those little experiences as well. And the other part of your question was just thought of another one. Are you still acting? Yes, I am. Obviously, the actors' strike has shut everything down pretty much, except for theater. And since I'm not doing any theater right now, so it's never that I actually feel like I'm not acting. It's just when opportunities come along, and I'm not auditioning for things on a regular basis. So it tends to be a bit more if someone contacts me and says, hey, I'm doing something and I'd like you to be a part of it. Or if I have an opportunity with people I know to create something, like I did with my little short film, Space Limbo. So I don't have an immediate plan for something else, but I expect that I'll have another project that I will work on in the relatively near future. I'll keep you posted. Thank you. This is from David Hackett, who said, I love to hear about how you became an actress, theater work, your family, your home, who you have met in your career as actors and actresses besides on the Waltons. I've had an opportunity to work with some really wonderful people. I got to do a film at one point, a TV movie that starred Mary Martin and Jack Albertson. So that was really sweet. There was a TV movie called Valentine. So I got to do these scenes with them, and that was wonderful. Mary Martin was very sweet, and she ended up giving everybody in the company an autographed copy of her biography. So her book that she wrote, which I think it's called My Heart Belongs. Anyway, really sweet. She was just, she was such a legend. And it was such a pleasure to get to know her. And I got to work with her son, Larry Hagman. I don't know how many of you know that Larry Hagman was Mary Martin's son. And I co-hosted a parade one year I think we were in Dallas. It was like a New Year's parade in Dallas, and it was absolutely freezing. And so we had that shared experience. So that was nice. Someone else that I had an opportunity to work with on a mini series up in Canada was Richard Chamberlain. And this ended up happening right after we filmed our last Walton reunion movie. Just shortly after that, I went up to Canada to shoot this mini series, and my son was like all of about 3 months old. So that was a bit of a challenge going up there and having to work out people to babysit for me on set. But it was great. He was, again, someone that I had watched in shows for years, and it was an honor to I actually played his wife in some flashback sequences. So that was fun, and got to ride a horse. It was a call that I got. I'd literally just had my son, and I was home recuperating, and I think he was like 2 or 3 weeks old, and I got 2 phone calls. I got the call about doing our last Walton Easter reunion, and I got a call about doing this mini-series. And the call was sort of like, do you ride horses? And it was like, yeah. And so it was from a casting director that I knew, and so I basically just got hired. I didn't have to audition for it, and that's nice. That doesn't happen very often, but it was great. And yes, there was riding involved in that, and I had not been riding, so I kind of went out and hopped on a horse a couple times before I went out to film. But it wasn't a terribly complex riding stuff, so that was fairly easy. And of course, I've had an opportunity to work with a couple of the cast members from Happy Days. I did plays with both Anson Williams. You've seen some photos of me with Anson when we did Social Security on stage in Canada, and then with Don Most. I did a production of Hello, Dolly, and also did a show that I wrote. We were supposed to do love letters, and we couldn't. There was a problem with getting the rights to it. It was too expensive for the theater. So I ended up writing a show that was 2 people, kind of like love letters. And it was sort of a couple that have kept sort of journals, diaries, since the time they met in college. And so one evening they decide, the wife gets the idea that they're going to revisit these diaries, which they never have. So they get their journals out and they sort of read them together. And it reveals the story of their time from meeting in college through to when they got married and they had children, and now they're, older. So it's kind of about their life, just a life of a couple and their family. And so we did that show a couple of times, and that was really wonderful. I loved working with Dawn. We both sing, so there were times where he was doing a concert and had me come and do a song or two with him in his concert, or I was doing a concert and I had him come be a guest and do some songs. So we've done that as well. So that's always been a lot of fun. Also did stage work with Larry Linville from MASH. We did a show together up in Canada, a show called Weekend Comedy. I enjoyed working with Larry. He has a wonderful sense of humor, and he was one that he enjoyed creating errors on stage. He would like, something would happen. He'd go, oh, that's not supposed to happen. We're going to do that again. So we never quite knew what Larry might do during the course of a scene or during the course of a show. One time we totally skipped a scene. It jumped ahead and during intermission, we were like, oh, we just totally missed that scene. And then during the curtain call, he sort of said to the audience, there was a scene that you didn't get to see, so we're going to do it now. So he made us recreate the scene in the curtain call. So Larry was always unpredictable in that way. Again, a comedy, so there were a lot of things that we could get away with. So he kept you on your toes because you never quite knew what was going to happen. I also worked with Bill Daley from Dream of Jeannie, and he did another show later on that is escaping me. We did, what show did we do? We did I Ought to Be in Pictures in Amarillo, Texas. So that was again, a lot of fun. I really enjoyed working with Bill. I played his daughter, and who hasn't seen, and I show up on his doorstep, and so we work through reconnecting as that relationship. I also had a chance to work with Hugh Beaumont. I Ought to Be in Pictures first in LA, and Hugh Beaumont from Leave It to Beaver, who played the father, did that production, and then I went straight from there. I had to cut that production short because I'd been asked to also do the same show in Texas. So I moved from doing it in LA to Texas. So when I went into rehearsals in Texas, I already knew the show. So that was great for me. Everybody else had to kind of get to know the show, but it was a different production. The staging was different. But I just had the advantage that I already knew all the lines. So I had a little bit easier time there. And speaking of Leave It to Beaver, I also worked with Tony Dow, and we did love letters a couple of times in Texas. I've had a chance to work with some really fun people on projects. That's what I have for you for this segment of Behind the Scenes. I'll be back with more of your questions in more segments of Behind the Scenes. Thanks for watching.